I'm Kelly Griffin with NCSL, and this is Across the Aisle, our podcast about bipartisanship. Ask 97-year-old Arlene Reichert of Montana for a surefire way to promote bipartisanship, and she'll cite a personal experience that led her to conclude legislators should not sit separated by party across the proverbial aisle. Reichert was one of the state's 100 delegates elected to rewrite the Constitution in 1972, and she is the oldest of 10 delegates still living. She says she and her colleagues decided to sit in alphabetical order.
And when we gathered in Helena for our orientation, the first thing we decided is we were going to forget partisan politics. We were going to sit alphabetically. And that was a very important factor. By the time the Constitution was written, we didn't even know the political party affiliations of our seatmates.
Not only did the collection of Montanans from all walks of life come to unanimous agreement on the Constitution 6 days ahead of schedule, Reichert says they became lifelong friends. Having Republicans and Democrats sitting in alternating seats or alphabetically are just a couple of the many ways states have tried to foster bipartisanship. At a time when every day we see evidence of a deep divide showing up on social media and in the news, a growing number of national organizations are dedicated to promoting bipartisanship and civility. They offer legislators fresh ideas about working across the aisle. They say it takes steady effort to build and strengthen bipartisan work. Today, on Across the Aisle, we're going to explore bipartisanship as a strategy. Hint, it's a winner, and as a means to improve legislation and even regain citizens' trust. Let's start with the data. Laurel Harbridge Young is an associate professor in political science at Northwestern University, and she's a faculty fellow at the Institute for Policy Research. She's studied bipartisanship for years at the federal and state level.
What we find is that there's a strong positive relationship between legislators' records of bringing in bipartisan co-sponsors on their legislation and having legislative success. So their bills moving further in the legislative process and eventually becoming law.
Harbridge Young says this is true even when a party has a big enough majority, it wouldn't seem that bipartisanship matters.
We find that bipartisanship is valuable for both majority and minority members. And we know on average, of course, majority party members are much more effective. But the kind of benefit that they get from bipartisanship is similar.
The National Institute for Civil Discourse formed in the wake of violence. In 2011, a gunman targeted Arizona Representative Gabby Giffords, gravely injuring her and killing 6 in Tucson. Prior to the shooting, Giffords had been in discussion with the University of Arizona about promoting civil discourse, and after the shooting, the Nonpartisan Institute was established. The Institute has a program called Next Generation, managed by Beth Harwell. She's the former Republican Speaker of the Tennessee House, who took over just as her party won back control from the Democrats. She had a message then.
Compromise is not a dirty word, and working with each other is actually a goal we should all strive for.
And as Speaker, she made a point of bringing in the Next Generation training for the Tennessee House.
I found a lot of the skills that I learned in this program were very beneficial in helping members understand the role of the minority parties, the importance of listening to their ideas and taking the thoughts that they have and allowing them to be applied with policy that we were forming. And then, just the concept for the majority party to treat others the way we would like to be treated.
The Next Gen program goes to a state only when invited by the leadership to ensure there's strong support. The workshops start with getting to know each other beyond party and beyond the work in the Capitol.
One of the first things we do is really develop an understanding of each other. And I know that may sound a little touchy-feely at first, but it really isn't. Every participant goes through a personal journey of what shaped your beliefs. And it's surprising how much people have never really taken the time to get to know each other, even though they serve in a legislative body. When you understand someone else's experiences, you're more willing to treat them with respect.
Leadership of the Delaware House of Representatives decided to hold the civility workshop to open this year's session. Majority Leader Valerie Longhurst says they wanted to welcome new members and bounce back from the disconnect of the COVID years when they worked together mostly on Zoom calls. While Democrats are in the majority, Longhurst says the state has a history of the parties working together, but they wanted to beef that up. Longhurst says now the body is planning a dinner together and activities like volleyball or maybe even ziplining. She says the workshop helped in ways constituents will be able to observe.
I would just say that you won't see the outbursts on social media because of frustration. What we did discuss in our conference civility training was social media and attacking people. The negativity, it just breeds more negativity. I think so far this year you haven't seen that negativity on social media because people are respecting each other more.
Natalie Wood is the director of the Center for Legislative Strengthening at NCSL. She notes that every state has rules and traditions aimed at supporting free and fair debate.
They allow the majority to get their way, but they also allow the minority to get their say.
For example, states have different means to ensure the minority party has a role in committees and to give minority party bills a chance. Some states make sure every bill gets a committee hearing. New Hampshire goes even further. It guarantees that every bill will get a vote in the House. And Texas has a decades-long tradition of giving some committee chairmanships to the minority party. Legislatures have an array of rules about how to address each other formally in the chamber and rules against name-calling and inappropriate language.
We were talking about how the rules ensure free and fair debate and provide a framework upon which group decision-making can take place. Another reason that it's of importance to understand the rules and to follow the rules is that they can also ensure decorum and civility. And that really goes hand in hand with what you're talking about when it comes to bipartisanship.
Another national group focused on bipartisanship is targeting young lawmakers.
My name is Layla Zayden. I am the president and CEO of Millennial Action Project, which is the largest nonpartisan organization for millennial and Gen Z lawmakers. We exist to help bridge the partisan divide and improve American democracy.
Tall order, but Zayden thinks up-and-coming lawmakers can do it.
MAP was really born out of a sense of possibility that the rising generation could do things differently. And in fact, we had seen outside of sort of political institutions that young people really were stepping up to start businesses or volunteer, really think outside the box in how to solve problems. We thought, well, what if we could create an organization that channels that energy once they start running and winning elected office?
To that end, MAP helps young state legislators, generally under 45, form future caucuses with bipartisan leadership. They explore how to work together to get things done. So far, there are future caucuses in more than 30 states. They're focused on issues like affordable housing, college tuition rates, voting reforms, and access to health care. Zayden notes that Gen Z, those are folks born between 1997 and 2013, increased their numbers in state legislatures by 170% in the last election. And independent is the fastest-growing party affiliation. She thinks this generation isn't buying into hardline party politics.
It's not really how young people are operating anymore. Sometimes I make the analogy of like Gen Z is not buying cable packages. They're getting maybe Netflix or they're getting, some other streaming service, but we're not bundling the whole package situation anymore. And we're looking at our politics in a really similar way. And that opens up, I think, a lot of opportunity to have these really productive conversations inside the legislature, where you can really pick and choose the ideas in ways that feel relevant and resonant to your community.
Zayden says these caucuses are all about issues and a good bit of socializing, like in Kansas, where the Future Caucus got together for one of its early meetings to try axe throwing. The humor isn't lost on Representative Tori Marie Blue, the Republican co-chair of the Kansas Future Caucus. Blue says she's sold on events like that to set the stage for more serious work. When she became co-chair of the caucus with Democrat Rhee Shue, they surveyed members. They wanted to zero in on issues where they had a common interest and weed out those where they absolutely did not.
We were able to say, like, for instance, abortion, gun rights. Those are very hot, heavy topics that we're not going to find common ground on. But
access to healthcare. We agree on the access to healthcare, but our avenues are different on how we want that access. So can we take away that and let's just talk about access to healthcare and access to rural healthcare?
The Future Caucus supported a bill to promote housing ownership and helped ensure its passage, earning praise from the governor. They've also brought a bill that would allow candidates to use campaign money to cover childcare costs while they're knocking on doors or attending events. The caucus won't endorse anything unless they reach 2/3 bipartisan support for the idea. Even though Blue is part of a supermajority in Kansas, she thinks the best work comes from bipartisanship.
I think bad policy is passed when it's one-sided and when it's rushed through. And so we definitely need to hear both sides and take the time and make sure that it's quality legislation that we're passing. And there's plenty of times in committee hearings that we think we have a great bill and then we hear a certain point and I didn't even think about that. So we definitely need their input as well to make bills even better.
Representative Rhee Shu agrees, but notes they're up against a long history of people taking sides.
The modern political atmosphere is very similar to how Americans view sports. You grew up rooting for a team. Your parents probably rooted for that team. It's really ingrained for you to root for that team. One team has to win every day. One team has to lose, and the media is going to cover winners and losers every single day. And then that's not really healthy. Politics isn't sports. Politics should not be sports. People's lives and people's tax dollars are on the line, and there is literally no reason why there can't be two winners every single day on every single bill.
For all this talk of the benefits of bipartisanship, are there downsides? Well, some legislators say they have encountered backlash from constituents who don't want them to compromise. Laurel Harbridge-Young, the Northwestern researcher, says her research shows that in primary elections, where the party's most partisan voters are likely to turn out, candidates can face opposition for having compromised. But she notes that outside of that arena, the public demonstrates it favors bipartisanship. And no one is saying all divides could disappear. Beth Harwell with the National Institute of Civil Discourse.
I do not want to sugarcoat it. Politics is a rough and tumble business. It's difficult. It probably more so on the federal level. But that's why I'm so encouraged and positive about this program, because I think there's great opportunity at the state level, because many of the folks that go on to national politics start at the state legislative level. And it's a great training ground at a smaller capacity to say, we can work things out. Even though this issue is difficult, we can work it out.
Harwell says bipartisanship ultimately is a path toward regaining trust of the public.
Civility is not just good manners. It's really being able to get something done. And if I hear anything from the public right now, it's that they're hungering and thirsting for the ability of our elected officials to come together and work out solutions.
I'm Kelly Griffin. Thanks for listening to Across the Aisle from NCSL. We want to tell your stories about bipartisanship, so send an email to acrosstheaisle@ncsl.org.
You can check out all of the podcasts from the National Conference of State Legislatures by searching for NCSL Podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. Tim Story, NCSL's CEO, hosts Legislatures, The Inside Story, where he focuses on leadership and legislatures. The Our American States podcast dives into some of the most challenging public policy issues facing legislators today. Also check out our special series, Building Democracy, on the colorful history of legislatures.